Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Tell Me Yours, a storytelling podcast with me, your host, Trey Everett. Today on the pod, I have an awesome guest. She's currently studying to be a sign language interpreter at the University of Houston in Texas. She's an author. Her book, How to Train a Husband, A Vet Tech's Guide to Love and Dating, is currently available on barnesandnoble.com. She also is the host of a wonderful and hilarious podcast called Mommy's Juice Box that you can find anywhere you get your podcasts. She also happens to be my sister. Mallary McKinzie is here with a truly creepy story. I'm very excited to get into this with you. I think you're going to love it. She adds a second piece that I was familiar with, but I wasn't expecting. And then she brings it home with a third segment that I was not expecting, but I felt was a really great button to this awesome conversation I had. So please enjoy Mallary McKinzie.
Sup, boy?
What's up, dude?
I have all my settings set to like mute and like turn the camera off as soon as it like Zoom comes up.
I do
for
too.
class.
Actually. I do too. I was helping a friend of mine for a few months ago with like a digital, like a virtual singer-songwriter night, and so I forgot that my personal Zoom had the theater company's name, and I joined like an interview with work, and they were like, "Who the fuck is Electric Company Theater?" And I was like, "Oh, my bad, guys!" Like, and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
dang it!" It was pretty funny. Well, yeah. Well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that a beer or coffee?
No, it's a Soleil.
Oh.
It's for
Is that one of those?
It's for basically when I get sick of all the LaCroix flavors that I like.
Oh, yeah.
Soleil, which it tastes exactly the same. All of this
so
shit's
funny.
it's just water. Like, it's just bubbly water.
There's a meme and it's like LaCroix tastes like TV static.
No, honestly, I
Like,
had
it's so accurate.
I had a friend and his daughter always called it spicy water, and I was like, it's so fucking succinct and like accurate. It's spicy water is all it is. So stupid.
The best.
Okay, you're gonna tell me a story today, yes. And you know what your story is. I think I know what your story is, but you maybe pulled a wild card. I don't know. I'm pretty sure.
No, I'm gonna do the story I think that we talked about doing.
Yeah, the story that is still sort of ongoing for various reasons.
Yeah.
Which I might participate in this story a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm here to listen to your story. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to tell the story about how our family is cursed.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're my sister. I'm in this family. I've been subject to said curse. Carry on.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just say, and I haven't mentioned this to you actually yet. I don't think I've ever talked about this part before. I distinctly remember having like what I now recognize as maybe mild hallucinations as like a younger like person.
Great.
Like, I remember distinctly one time hiding under my blankets because I thought there were bugs all over the floor.
Okay, time out. You and I have discussed this ad nauseum over the last several years, and my recollection of having these conversations with you, you've always been very like, I don't want to say like you've brushed it off, but you've always been very nonchalant as like, oh, this is an experience that you guys have had. I maybe had it, but it wasn't a big deal. And you literally just told me that one time you hid under your blanket because you thought there were bugs everywhere.
Yes.
Oh, Jesus
I also remember
Christ.
One time I was flipping through my closet and I thought there was I jumped back because as I was like flipping through clothes, I thought there was a person hanging in my closet.
Oh my gosh.
That was probably the only time that happened, though. But both of those things were in that house.
Oh my gosh.
But that was at the same time when I started seeing things in the other house.
Okay.
Because parents were divorced, like,
yes,
right. So we lived in two different houses, back and forth.
You primarily lived with our dad, and I primarily lived with our mom.
Yes. But I'm meaning even before that, I'm meaning the house by the railroad tracks, the apartment.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
That's where the majority of my like impressionable memories are from.
Oh my god.
With that. So I remember those things happening. And again, like you just you rationalize, right? You're like, this is fine.
Yeah.
Like that was obviously, I was probably dreaming. And
Yeah.
then you're like, oh, well, and then
How old were you at this point when you like when
I,
this experience first started, where you first started noticing like, hey, I think I might be seeing things in this apartment that I'm spending a lot of time in? Like, how old were you at this point?
right after we had moved in. So I was what, 12,
Okay.
12 to 14,
Okay.
I think and that's probably when like the dream started.
Yeah.
And
Also a time of
so,
life when you have nothing else going on, so it's great.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, so I would say 12 to 14 is when those things started.
Okay.
But I was what, 32 before we figured out that this was not just, I figured out it was not just me and it was like our whole family,
Oh, okay.
which is a long amount of time to think, wow, maybe I'm a little crazy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so
So,
you're 12 to 14-ish. You are starting to experiencing these things that you can't quite explain.
yes. So let's fast forward to when I'm 32.
Okay.
Okay. I go to Colorado with dad
Okay.
and Aunt Teresa's there. Like we're all there. And I interrupt a conversation. I walk out on the patio and I end up interrupting a conversation between the two of them of, oh, have you seen him lately? No, I haven't. Have you? I haven't, but the cousin did. This kind of thing. And I go, and I just walk out there and sit down in a chair, right? Like they're in a conversation. We're at a house in Denver. Like it's
Yeah.
beautiful. And so I'm just sitting on the patio with them. And Teresa looks at dad and she goes, have you ever asked Mallary about it? If she's seen him. And I go, and like dad goes, oh no, I've never asked him. And he starts to like take a breath in to ask me. And I go, do you mean the guy in the top hat? And I watched the blood drain out of both of their faces. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, it's been a long time, but yeah, occasionally. And then dad like just threw his hands up in the air and was like, I can't talk about this, and left. He just left the patio.
Oh my
And
gosh.
Teresa was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And like she just followed him into the kitchen. Like, and then it was over. The conversation was over. And I couldn't get either one of them to talk about it again. Since then, I think that neither one of them have ever brought it up again. They won't talk about it. And I'm like, hey, if we're all having simultaneous dreams about the same thing for 30 years, maybe this is a conversation that should involve more than like me answering a question you didn't ask me.
Oh my god.
So what they're talking about is the whole family has recurring nightmares about like a shadow man in a top hat. So
Which when you just say it objectively, it does sound ridiculous. Like
it sounds hilarious.
The image that you immediately think of, yeah.
So so that's 32, right? Let's back up to me being like 25.
Okay.
Me and Gabe are driving in the car.
Yeah.
Gabe is my husband, and we're listening to Coast to Coast, right?
Okay.
Because it's just funny to listen to people call in at midnight and talk about chemtrails, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, that's what you want. That's what you're going. You know what you're getting. You turn on Coast to Coast.
That's why you turn on Coast to Coast, really.
It's because you're like, I can't wait to see when this guy, the guy who talks next is definitely going to mention lizard people. Like, you just know what you're getting. So, and a guy calls in and is like, I'm being haunted. And he's like, oh, what are you being? His voice is so like monotone and unfazed by everything people are saying. What are you being haunted by? I'm being haunted by a shadow man in a top hat. And I like froze because it was the first time I was like, oh, this is a thing. This is not just a weird nightmare that I have occasionally. Like, this is a thing other people
because this is
see.
About 7 years before you realized it was a family thing as well. So
yes.
you're having this moment where you're like, oh wow, this thing I experienced as a child,
other strangers,
other people
experience.
that I do not talk to have also had similar experiences.
Yes. And it was and I like told Gabe, I was like, I see that guy. And he was like, oh yeah. I mean, we were probably all the way home from a bar. You know what I mean? Like, he was just like, oh yeah, sure you do. Like, and I don't know that's basically the response I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you do when someone says, "Oh, hey,
by the way, yeah.
By the way, I see this ghost thing too. Like this guy on coast to coast here, like sees." Suddenly, chemtrail guy might be making more sense. You know what I mean? Like it's.
You know what? Actually, he's got some good points now that I think about it.
You know what? Now that I know this guy's legit, maybe that other guy was not an idiot. I have a recurring dream where I am laying down in bed. My back is to the door. It's a pitch black room. And the door swings open and my entire room is flooded with the bright light, like terrifying bright light. You think light should be like, it's light. It should be reassuring. It's not. It's a terrifying bright light. Ugh. And I open my eyes and I'm facing away from the door. So I'm looking at the wall, and on the wall, the shadow of a guy in a top hat comes into view. Oh. And I can tell from the shadow that he is walking toward me. And that's usually where I wake up in like a cold sweat and I don't sleep for the rest of the night.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so is this something that this is a nightmare you still have?
I have not had a nightmare like that since we moved into this house.
Which in your current house is like objectively haunted, which is
interesting. And my current house is also objectively haunted. Yeah, since we moved in, I haven't had any of those experiences. It just stopped. Yeah. So.
Oh. Okay, so you're 25. You hear some stranger on Coast to Coast talk about this experience that you recognize. Cut to you're 32, and then you find out that, oh, this isn't just me. This is also my dad. This is also my aunt.
Yes. So let's pick back up in Denver.
Cool.
We left the house and me and Gabe went and had our own little vacation, like in Denver proper. Like we went to a comedy show, we went out to eat, we did a bunch of things. So we come back home. And so that really just kind of wiped that from my mind for a little bit. So it's maybe 2 months later. And I remember that I have never asked you about it. I was just like sitting on the couch and I was like, oh, I need to ask Trey about that and see if he knows like what the deal is with this. Right. And I text you and I said, hey, I've got a weird question to ask you. And I said, do you ever dream about a man in a top hat? And you answered almost immediately. Well, I take that back. The little dots showed up for probably a minute. And then you just sent back yes in the single text message. After the dots had been up for quite a long time, all I got was yes.
Yeah.
And then right after that, you said, I don't really want to talk about it. Why are you asking that? And I said, we all have them. And you said, what do you mean we all? And I said, the whole family. And you immediately called me. Because I was like, we all the whole family, Dad, Teresa, the cousins, me, you, like we all have them. And you called me and you were like, what? In that way, like just like that, in that tone of like, this is a funny, awful joke. And I don't think it's funny.
I vividly remember that moment.
Yeah.
Naturally. I remember I was at work and I was like in the midst of work, doing work, and I feel my phone vibrate. So I look at it and I see that. And I just like, my work was very loud and I remember it going like immediately silent. And I was like, this is not a great text to receive. Because from my perspective, it's something I had experienced my entire life. It was not necessarily tied to a place or a house or like an emotional response. Like it's just something I always experienced. The thing with mine is that I never knew if I was dreaming or not, which is like the horrifying part to me. Is it was always in that moment of like I could be falling asleep and this could be a dream, like when you're walking down the sidewalk and you kick the crack and you wake up.
Yes.
I was like, is that just this or am I like very awake right now? And I'm experiencing this. And I had never talked to anyone about it. Like, never talked to you, never talked to Dad, never talked to Teresa, Mom, cousin, no one. No one knew I was experiencing this except for me. So when I see that text message, like, I wanted to throw up a little bit. If I'm being really honest, like, I wanted to throw up right then. And the first thing I thought of was like, why are you asking me this? And I was
Yeah.
like, because I don't feel like talking about this with you. Like, I don't want to talk about this with anyone.
Yeah.
Why are you
You know what?
asking?
You know what I always thought was interesting about that interaction is your response was not, how do you know? Your response was, why are you asking?
Mm.
Which are two distinctly different things to ask.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Are you just realizing that?
Yeah, I don't like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But to me, that just shows that on like some level, like me asking about it, you knew that like, oh, this is not just me.
Yeah. So I remember asking you at that point, I had you tell me the brief story about Colorado and how this came to be. And then I remember asking, like, because this was like several weeks, maybe months after that Denver trip that you took with the family.
Yes.
I remember asking, like, was that it? Like, have you had any follow-ups after that? Like, was that just how this happened?
Yeah, that was it. That was the end of the conversation. And so, and since it's been 6 years now, and we've still had no further conversations about it. Not even me and you, really.
Really,
like me and you have mentioned it to each other like once, because I was like, oh, you're going to dinner with dad, ask him.
Yeah.
And he shut down and was like, absolutely not, we're not talking about this.
Yeah, so I have tried on multiple occasions to ask more.
Yeah.
And it's the same response.
His
like,
answer was one time, and it's the most ominous sentence.
I hate it. I already know what you're gonna say, and I hate it.
You asked and he said, look, I don't want to talk about this. I'm just happy that for you and your sister, it's just dreams. Which is the most bone-chilling statement.
From our father, who is a stoic man of silence.
Yes.
To say, I'm just happy that for you and your sister, it's dreams.
Yeah. Oh my God.
What?
If that had happened, if that line was said in a movie, I would be like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
How campy is this?
Yeah, it's so
Somebody call some new writers.
Oh my gosh.
Do you want to talk about how my house is haunted?
I would. Yeah, I would.
That is a very brief. It's not. Well, that one's not long.
Mainly because I find it super fascinating that you first had these experiences very young. They evolved as you got older, and you were able to put more context to them, and sort of, I guess, maybe more, not understanding, but more realization. And then now you move into this particular house. And how many years have you been in this current
house? We bought this house in 2012.
Okay, so that's a while.
So we've been in this house basically a decade. Yeah.
And when you move into this house, you stop experiencing this essentially lifelong experience.
I have not had a nightmare like that since I moved into this house.
So that's awesome. I'm very happy for you.
Yeah,
I'm so great for you. Yeah, no, super great for you.
Let me just say, I'm real sorry.
But the main thing I find interesting about it, and like the main thing I find interesting about you not experiencing that anymore, is because of the experiences that you have consistently had in this house.
In my current house, yes.
Please elaborate.
Okay. So my current house.
I hate everything about this conversation, by the way. This is
I know
terrible.
you do. Let me just say that when we had looked at maybe 40 houses, our realtor hated us, right? Okay. And she didn't. She's lovely, and I would recommend her to anybody. But I know that like every time we line up for these days of seeing 5 and 6 houses, and we would walk in and be like, we hate them. And I truly feel like it's one of those like when you know things. Like, we pulled into the driveway and I said, we're going to buy this house to Gabe.
Oh, interesting.
And around the corner from the house came a peacock, like a giant, like plumed out, like beautiful peacock. And I was like, oh, we're definitely buying this house. And then we laughed hysterically. And he was like, why don't we see inside first? And I said, we don't have to.
Oh, wow.
And then we walked in, There is different carpet in every room, including the kitchen.
Oh no.
There is dark wood paneling everywhere. There is in case of emergency, push button, like nailed to the side of like the master wall, like one of the master walls,
Okay.
which was obviously like necessary at some point. And it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare place. And I was like, baby, this is it.
Oh my gosh.
And luckily I have a husband who like loves me and is down for, an experience. Yeah. And we bought the house. So, but we're in the middle of nowhere. Like, we are on the end of a dead end street. We are the last house on the left. We are the last house on a dead end street. We are the house with the circle drive. We're like 9 different horror movie titles.
I love it. Yeah.
Like being out here. And so, but I have never felt like unnerved by this place. I have never felt anything but like just nice, like wonderful, peaceful energy here.
Yeah.
And I'm not like the energy in this. I'm not that kind of person.
Yeah, totally.
I am rational to the core.
Yeah.
Type person. But I just knew when we pulled to the driveway, like, this is it. This is our house.
Oh my gosh.
It was an original build. It was still owned by the original owners.
Okay.
It was built in 1969. So at that point, the house is 42 years old. Original owners are selling it. It was custom build when like their kids were in their teenagers. And so we did a lot of remodeling. Like, the house is, I mean, basically the only thing left in this house that was here when like it was original, or like the studs and like the closets. Like, we've done everything to this house. And even in doing those, like, it's never been a bad, like, the energy's always been good, right? Like, some people are like, I started to remodel my old house and the energy changed. Not that case. But the first December that we lived here, I was doing nights at the time. And so my schedule was all off. So it was bedtime and I had just gone to bed, and Gabe was like, it's too early for me to go to bed. I'm going to stay up. So I go to bed alone, and then I wake up in the middle of the night and Gabe's in bed asleep. And I wake up because I hear crying, and like loud crying, like not like it was in the room with me though. Like it sounded like it was in a different room.
Okay.
So your face right now is,
I hate this so much.
So I lay there for a second and I'm listening to this crying. And my first thought is, oh, I bet one of Gabe's sisters like got in a fight with her boyfriend. She's probably stayed in the spare. She probably came over after I was already in bed. Right. Again, you rationalize, right?
Well, I mean, and the idea that this sound is so visceral that your brain is like, surely one of my sister-in-laws ended up coming over after a fight with their significant other.
That was my thought.
And she can't sleep because she's sad and she's crying in the other room.
Yes.
Like, that to you makes sense. Based on the sound that you're listening to.
It's a woman crying. That's all I know. Like, all I know is there is a female voice crying in the other room.
Kill me. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have this thought. You're like, oh.
So I'm laying there and I'm like, oh, it's probably one of my sisters. And like the crying keeps going, right? And it's been a few minutes. And I'm like, maybe I should do something, right? Like, should I go try to console her? Like, and this is how I know I wasn't dreaming, because I'm having all these, like, I'm laying in bed with my eyes open in the dark, having these like these are the thoughts I'm having. So I know I'm not asleep. I know it wasn't a dream. And I sit up in bed and I'm listening. Another minute goes by and I'm like, I can't keep listening to this. I have to do something, right? And I go to reach my hand out to wake Gabe up, to ask him like, which sister is it, right? Just so I know what I'm walking in the room to. And I'm about to like wake him up, and the crying like stops. Not like you turn like the radio off stops. Like, it just like natural. Like, I heard like a sigh, and like it ended, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, if she's done, she's gonna go to sleep now. We're good. So I go back to bed. I just laid back down and went to bed.
Oh my God.
But I was sitting up, like I sat up and I was reaching to wake Gabe up. So I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. Gabe's already up in the morning. He's making coffee. And I come into the kitchen and I say, hey, did Ashley and so-and-so have a fight? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, was she still here? And he's like, what? There's nobody here. And I'm like, well, she came over last night, right? I heard. And he's like, no, that's no, nobody was here. And I was like, oh, then that's real weird. Cause I and I tell him like, oh, that's really weird because I heard crying from the other room last night. And he goes, no, you didn't. And I'm like, you're probably dreaming. And I'm like, babe.
Oh God.
Okay, babe. Okay. And I marked it like in the calendar. It was December 17th. I marked it in my calendar because it was their first Christmas. And I was like, if this happens next Christmas, I'm going to have to like make an ofrenda or something. I don't like have to do something.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to like figure out a way to let Mary know, like, bitch, it's fine. You can.
This is a safe space, bro.
Yeah. So, and since then I've heard it one other time.
The same crying.
Oh
my God.
This time was in February of like a few years ago. I didn't mark that one because I was just like, oh, she's crying again.
Oh my gosh.
But what will happen in addition to that is I hear music and I hear like voices and like music in the house.
Okay.
So I'll be in like most of the time it's when I'm in the bedroom or I'm in the bath, like our master bathroom, like off the bedroom, and I'll think to myself, oh, I forgot to turn the TV off. Because I can hear what I think is TV sounds in the living room. And so I come in and of course it's gone, right? And I'm just like, oh, that's Mary, whatever.
Oh my gosh. Why do you have the name Mary?
Because that's the owner. I know the owner.
Oh, that was the original owner?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so, or I'll hear music, like, and Gabe's like, you're not hearing music. You're hearing like the air moving through the hallway, just tonally. Like that's what you're hearing. You think it's music. It's not. It's just wind currents down the hallway. And I'm like, bro, do you think we're in a palapa?
Well, the wind has the voice of an angel.
Yeah. Do you think we're in Hawaii, like with the palapa roof and like the wind blowing through our hallway? What are you talking about?
Oh my God.
The hallway is where we go in a tornado. Like there's no windows and we can cut all the doors. Like it's
oh my gosh.
There's no wind current.
It's this literally is my nightmare. Like it's quite literally my nightmare.
But you know what, even in those times, nothing ever feels like ominous.
For sure. Nothing
ever feels like, occasionally you'll catch things outside your eye and stuff like that, and you turn and they're not there.
Yeah.
But it's never that feeling of like I'm being watched, or it's never that feeling of like
it's not
fear.
Like, it's not dark. Like,
nothing about it is dark. It is all very just light. And like you had a roommate.
Yeah.
It's like you had a weird roommate. That's what it feels like.
Okay, so that's like a super interesting thing to me too. So this experience with the man in the top hat obviously invoked was terrifying. Was not good. That was not a good experience.
That was not a good experience.
Yes.
And I wouldn't even say this house, it's a good experience. It's just an experience. Like it's just an experience. Like there's certain things when you're like, this fills me with good feelings.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It's just like having a roommate.
Oh my God.
It's just like being at a restaurant and having a stranger walk by. It means nothing, but it doesn't feel dark. It just feels Top Hat Man is dark. That is, and I have done research I have like Googled that before, and you can dig into shadow people but if you Google like Top Hat Man, like it comes up. Like it is not just our family, and it is not new, and it is not.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I have a third thing.
Oh Jesus Christ, Mallary! I don't know what the third thing is. I don't know how I feel about it.
The third thing is that when people I know die, or when people die who my friends know, like my friend's mom, or somebody I maybe had contact with at some point, but I'm not like close to.
Yeah.
I see them afterward. I hate
this.
I dream about them afterwards.
Like, oh my gosh. Like what? Like how? Like
so
how? Like, do you know that they've gone when you have the dream, or like?
yes, they're no, not like a they pass and I dream and like I wake up and I get the call they're dead. Not like that.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, like, so the first time was when I was in my late 20s, and this genuinely could just be dreams,
For sure.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
This
for
one
sure.
we're moving into like a middle ground where I don't really know what it is,
But it's consistent.
but it is consistent. One of my coworkers, her mom died. It's weeks, maybe months later, and I had a dream about her. I dreamed that she like I was at a cafe or like somewhere, and she walked up and like sat down on the table with me, and we had a great conversation, and that was it. Like it was just a nice like, I'm doing fine. Had a conversation. How are you? I'm great. Good. How are you? Like just a conversation.
Yeah.
Like a conversation like you would have with an acquaintance.
Yeah.
Which is what we were. We were not like,
oh my gosh.
But I got to work the next day, and I was like talking to my coworker, and I was like, girl, I don't even know if I want to tell you this. Like, I dreamed about your mom last night. And she just like stared at me, and she's like, what did she say? And I was like, she just asked how you were. I told her you were good. And she just stared at me some more, and she's like, I don't know how to feel about that. I'm like, I don't either. Like, this is not. And then she stared at me a little longer, and she goes, why didn't I dream about her? And I go, and this is a quote. I'm paraphrasing a quote from a book I read once. Mary Beth Chapman wrote a book called See.
Okay. And
there's a part in there where she talks about her friend dreamed about like her deceased daughter, and her friend told her about it. And the same conversation, it was the exact same conversation, which was, that part was more eerie than anything else. And I go, wow, I told her, I was like, I read this book and this happened in this book. And the answer that she gave was, I think that if you saw her in your dreams, you'd never want to wake up. And it was just, and she goes, thank you for telling me that. And then it was over. Like we moved on. We never talked about it again.
Wow.
And I was like, and it was kind of one of those profound moments. I was like, maybe this is still a dream. But one of my coworkers passed away, and she was older and had many health problems. She lived a great life, that kind of thing. But her niece works with us also. And so again, it was months later, and I didn't know it, but her niece was going to be working with us that weekend. But I didn't have the schedule. I'm on a set schedule, so I don't ever look at the schedule because I know my shift is every other week from this time to this time.
For sure. Yeah.
And same thing, the night before, I had a dream that she pulled up in like her pickup truck outside the clinic, and I got in her car, and we went and drove around and listened to music, which is what we did when we worked together. And she told me she's great. She looked fantastic, and she wasn't sick anymore. And I got to work the next day, and her niece was there, and I had the same conversation. Yeah. Hey, I don't know if I should tell you this or not, but I dreamed about Monty last night.
That's so
And
wild.
then the same thing happened with my dogs, to the point where I was lucid dreaming about it. To the point where I would be having a dream about something completely like different, and Argyle would run into my dream, like from just a corner of the room. Like he'd show up, and I was having them so frequently that at one point he ran up to me, and I go, fuck, this is a dream.
Oh, wow.
Because I knew he was there. And I was like, buddy, we can't keep doing this. And then he stopped, and it stopped.
Oh, wow.
And the same thing happened with Chico, but Chico only came once, and Spetzel never came.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Right?
Yeah. That sounds, yeah.
She's doing stuff, you know what I mean?
She's busy. She's got shit to do. But yeah, it's a thing.
That's
and it's
wild.
It happened one other time with someone who I had was an acquaintance who was recently deceased, and here's the deal. Those could just be dreams,
100%.
right?
Yeah, 100%.
100%. Those could just be like something showed up that put them in my like subconscious that day. And I went home, I like went to sleep and had a dream. Yeah. That could be purely coincidental, but it doesn't feel like a normal dream. And I don't know how else to describe it.
I get that. And I think it also, at the end of the day, I don't know that it matters.
It does. It absolutely
doesn't. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if that's just a dream or not.
Like, it doesn't matter.
That moment isn't any less real.
But they feel like lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
I feel like when I'm in those dreams, I know I'm dreaming. I know, like, I'm aware. And you know how when you have a dream and you have conversations with people, they're answering, but it's one of those things where like it's your dream.
Yeah.
So you know what they're gonna answer. Like on your subconscious level, like you're in charge of the dream when you're not lucid dreaming. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But when you're lucid dreaming, you're like, oh, you're very aware.
Yeah, totally.
This feels like neither one of those.
Oh,
like we will have a conversation and I will ask a question and I don't subconsciously know what their answer is going to be. It feels different.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it feels different.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like we should leave it there because that's like
I think that's the end of it.
That's still like a little weird, a little creepy, but there's also like a little bit of hope there.
That wasn't that a nice little. I planned that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I wanted to like, I brought you down real far with your hatred of all of this. And then I picked it up a little with the happy.
I so appreciate
and then I
that.
ended on it's probably all fake.
Like, or none of it was real. Yeah.
or none of it was real.
Oh my
or this is Dallas and it was all a dream.
That's like, so good. That's so good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
What a weird world we live in.
Yeah.
All right. I feel good. You feel good?
I feel great. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. Super appreciate it.
Thanks for doing it. Thanks for being my first one. Is there anything that I could like point people towards in terms of sign language if they wanted to like learn more about what you're learning about?
Yeah. So a great place to start is Bill Vickers. You just Google Bill Vickers, Vicars, YouTube. Just put that in your Google. He has hours upon hours of lessons.
Cool.
And he's a deaf individual. If you're going to learn sign language, learn it from a deaf individual.
Yeah,
like,
makes sense.
It's just learn it from a native signer, a coda, which is a child of a deaf adult. Like they're native signers. You want to learn your sign language from a native signer. And so, but yeah, he's got a fantastic one where he teaches some vocabulary words to a student. And then they have a conversation using those vocabulary words. And then he does more. And then they do a full rant. And they're hours.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely, I'll include something about that in case people are interested in learning more about that.
Absolutely.
I love it. All right, dude.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Tell Me Yours, a storytelling podcast with me, your host, Trey Everett. If you want to know more about the legend and lore behind the Shadow Man and the Top Hat, just give it a goog. Look it up on Google. There's a disturbing amount of information about this very creepy phenomenon that affects so many more people than you would think. I will not be Googling it. I do not need to learn any more than I already do. But if you want to learn more about sign language and potentially learning sign language, as Mallary said, you can check out Bill Vickers on YouTube. It's just youtube.com/Bill Vickers, Vicars. He's got some incredible videos, some really amazing resources. And as Mallary said, if you ever want to learn a language, learn it from a native speaker. Be sure to follow us on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Tell Me Yours Pod. And be sure to join our Patreon, where you'll have exclusive access to unedited interviews with videos, some fun extra stories, really, really cool stuff coming out on the Patreon soon. It's just patreon.com/tellmeyours. Thank you so much for listening this week. Be sure to check us out again next week where I have another really incredible story that I'm excited to share with you. Until next time, be kind to each other, be nice, and we'll talk soon. See ya.